मुबारक हो, इंटरव्यू हुआ है, राइट? बड़ी अच्छी बात है. It's very tough stage to reach thanks to the insane reservation policy that is in place at each stage of this admission process, right? So there are reservations for, I believe, women. There are reservations for domicile, and then making it through means we are pretty much through. Just ek do number ek do ka fasla rahe. Now the interview is for 10 marks, right? Yes. And they will be interviewing roughly around 150 odd people, correct?
I know quite a few who have. So I personally know 4 more people who have gotten through to the interview stage from LSR itself.
Acha, who are from LSR? Okay. Now, the thing is that the interview is going to be lasting for somewhere around the 10 to 15 odd marks. इससे ऊपर नहीं जाएंगे, right? But our interview discussion will last for much more than that.
Yes.
So that we can cover out each and every permutation and combination that they can perhaps ask you from your CV, right? And general discourse. So it is not going to be as lengthy or as puzzling that I just may make this out to be, first and foremost. And that is perhaps the purpose of a mock interview also, is to acquaint you with all the permutations and combinations that they can ask you. Before we formally begin, I'm just giving you the instruction set.
Yes.
Okay. Acha. Second thing you'll do in the interview is, are you on a laptop right now?
Yes.
Place some books underneath the laptop.
Give me a second. Is it better now?
अच्छा, तो और ले आओ आयुषी. So this is a pro tip. आगे के लिए भी the webcam has to be on your eye level. ठीक है? Even though मेरा नहीं है इस time पे, because I really need it. But in your case, just pointing out a tip for an online interview. लैपटॉप के नीचे हाँ सारी डाल दो और लैपटॉप को ऊंचा कर दो. जी. अब थोड़ा सा नीचे हाँ बस ठीक है, अब ठीक है. So अच्छा, always remember, even when you're working professionally later, the webcam has to be on your eye level.
Okay.
See, right now, let us say, right now my laptop is on a flat surface, but if I put in one book. Now if I put multiple books, this तो ऐसे नहीं लगता that that you are sitting somewhere in the basement and talking to me. ठीक है? तो अभी तो spiral वाला रख दिया. Just find out 3-4 books and before the interview starts, visually कि मेरा webcam मेरे eye level पे, ताकि नीचे ना दिखे. ठीक है?
Is that high enough or do I need more books?
I think this is enough. एक और आ सकती है, perhaps a slim one. ठीक है?
Okay.
Perhaps, but बाकी वैसे मेरे हिसाब से अब ठीक है, right? क्योंकि होता क्या है कि whenever we are taking an interview online, usually the laptop is placed थोड़ा नीचे. वो ना अजीब सा आदमी ऐसे दिखाई देता. And then it's sort of I'd say, first impression is the last impression. In most cases. ठीक है जी. So it ruins that. Now, अच्छा DU की तैयारी हो गई पूरी? हो रखी है या नहीं हो रखी? Online course पूरा कर लिया?
So, एक चीज़ स्टैटिक जी के बची है, बाकी सब ऑलमोस्ट कॉन्सेप्ट.
स्टैटिक जी के में तुमने अभी 5-7 वो भी डाल दिए हैं, क्या बोलते हैं, ऐड करे हैं ना, सारी डिटेल्स लिख लेना. DU is pretty much sorted. I don't think DU will be a problem for you at all. Have you started taking the mocks? Final semester over?
So it's on 31st is my last exam. So
अच्छा ठीक है, वो तो मैनेज हो जाएगा. I believe उसमें तो कोई प्रॉब्लम आनी नहीं.
I think NLS was way easier for me because NLS had no knowledge and I have a hard time memorizing facts.
See, understand this. For an exam like NLS, if we'll just start the interview in another 5 minutes or so. For an exam such as NLS, you tell me as a student, does your schooling matter or does your preparation? There is no specific preparation.
I think it's the schooling in the background.
Correct. And if let us say that someone enrolls in a coaching academy as well, I don't think that somebody can increase your aptitude levels so easily. Because this is an aptitude-based exam. It's an open-ended exam. Your schooling and English ki foundation matter. Like you have said, I know 4 more from LSR now. If you actually go out and notice, you will find folks from such colleges only. who are high in academics making the cut to the interview because you are being judged on your English. The part A was extremely easy. I believe, I don't think that anyone with even half a heart who had put half a heart in their preparation would have found part A to be any difficult. The current affairs were mostly easy. 5 odd them were very random.
But they were for everyone.
Yeah. And but the passages were easy, no? The critical reasoning bit was quite easy, right? And the legal reasoning में भी ऐसा तो उन्होंने कुछ उल्टा ऊटपटांग तो पूछा नहीं था, right? So what does it boil to? Your basic intelligence that you're carrying out from your school plus your basic schooling. ठीक है जी? तो semester तो आपका काफी ज़्यादा tough होगा NLS के exam के मुकाबले. That is definitely for sure because that is a specific domain. अच्छा, now when we come into this interview तो 10 number है, right? 10 number है. 10 number का so in ILI, DJS का भी जो interview होता है, Delhi Judicial Services वगैरह सबका जो interview होता है last for somewhere around 5 to 10 minutes. I don't expect this interview to be lasting any more than that. So you have pretty much 10 minutes to make an impression. Okay. Now we'll carry out an interview somewhere around the 20-25 odd mark, and then you can note down. अच्छा, note down करने की जरूरत नहीं है. I'll give you a permutation and combination of the possible questions that they can ask you while assessing your CV. ठीक है जी. And then we'll share the feedback. And I won't put this on YouTube till the final result is declared or anything. It remains in the archive. ठीक है जी. Because YouTube पे डाल के भी क्या करना है? कोई अपनी ऐड तो करनी नहीं है. दूसरी बात, होता क्या है कि ज्यादातर जनता डाल देती है ये सब बिफोर इवन द रिजल्ट कि जी और बच्चे आ जाएं, लेकिन मुसीबत है पहली बात तो और बच्चे चाहिए नहीं, दूसरी बात इट स्पॉइल्स अस, इट इंक्रीजेस आवर कंपटीशन. ठीक है जी. अच्छा, so we'll start off now. We're beginning the formal interview, right? So good afternoon, Ayushi. Please introduce yourself.
Good afternoon, sir. I'm Ayushi Jain. Born and brought up in Delhi, I completed my schooling through Convent of Jesus and Mary School, New Delhi, and I'm currently pursuing my bachelor from Lady Shri Ram College, Women, in political science with an elective in sociology. I have a consistent academic record with a CGPA of 10 in my class 10th board examinations, a 97.8% in my class 12 CBSE board examinations, and I'm currently maintaining an 8.5 CGPA in my college. The last 3 years have also helped me develop certain crucial writing and research skills. I have also been an active participant in extracurricular activities and have been a teaching volunteer at an NGO, Udayan Care. I'm also a debater and adjudicator for the LSR English Debating Society and a member of the Creative Writing Society. In my leisure time, I like to read, like to creative write, and also like to listen to music.
Thank you for that. Now, when I see your CV, Ayushi, I see that you have written an academic research paper on the new labor code's implication across classes and sectors, which has won an award at the Hindu College, correct?
Yes.
So my question to you is, what is the implication across the class and sectors? So what was the net conclusion of that paper that you wrote? So what is the implication of the new labor code across class and sectors?
Yes, sir. So there have been both pros and cons within the code. Some of the pros include setting up a social security fund and a floor wage for the unorganized sector. And since India's population is largely employed in the unorganized sector, that can help mitigate some of the issues that the unorganized sector faces. But moving on to the issues which have been critically discussed since the passing of these codes. Firstly, the implication it has on the rights of workers and trade unions when it comes to protests. So the codes require a 60 days notice before a labor union can go to protest, which has certain implications on the fundamental right to protest of people within the workplace. Moreover, the requirement for a negotiating council or a union, which has to have 51% participation, makes it so that different voices and different classes of people, because even the workforce is divided on the basis of caste, on the basis of gender, and these minority groups and their voices can then get lost within these negotiating councils. Moreover, the implication it had, so the making gratuity also fixed important for the fixed term employment means that there is a possibility that women may not be given fixed term employments and the associated benefits that come from it, because employers will have to now pay more gratuity. And those are some implications across classes and sectors. So managing the pros and the cons will become a task of implementation, and it's yet to see how these codes pan out in the future.
Okay. Now, just a brief question, something you can even answer it in a yes or no format. Do you agree that this new labor code was needed?
Yes, sir. Because earlier the rules of the workforce had around 44 codes, and it was difficult to go through those and implement those. And there's a lot of problems within the unorganized sector, and we have gig economy workers now. So it's important to address these issues, and these codes have gone a step further in that direction. However, we need to mitigate further concerns as well.
When you say gig economy, what do you mean by gig economy?
So these would include workers like the delivery workers that we have, the cab driver workers that we have. And within the last 2 years in the pandemic, these jobs have increased and more people have been pushed towards these jobs as well, since employment rates within the fixed sector, the organized sector, have gone down.
You mentioned fundamental rights when you were discussing the labor code. Did we borrow the fundamental rights from any country? Do you have any idea about that?
So we did not borrow anything, but rather we took inspiration from other constitutions, especially in the case of fundamental rights, Bill of Rights in America. But we have taken inspiration from them and then applied them to the Indian polity and to the needs of the Indian people.
Okay. And in which part of the constitution are they given?
So part 3 of the Indian constitution.
Okay. Now, moving on to your second research paper, it's calculating caste instrument value of enumeration. What is your view, or what was the conclusion of this paper?
So the conclusion of this paper is that we indeed need certain calculation to set indicators on what is social wealth at the end of the day, because we have reservation policies, but who or what decides at what level emancipation do we need for people who be no longer deserving of reservation, as they say. And the issue of subcategorization is also an important issue within caste census itself, because OBC set subcategorization, and at what criteria do we subcategorize them have been a continuing issue with the Rohini Commission set up for that reason, and with a recent judgment by Justice Arun Mishra, who has suggested a review of the E.V. Chennaiya judgment, which says that there can be no subcategorization within the scheduled castes and the scheduled tribes. And I think with moving on with the limited capital and the limited resources we have, we need to be more concerned about how we distribute these resources justly. And is the 27% indicator for the OBCs a valid or an arbitrary number at the end of the day if we don't have data substantiating it?
So based on the conversation that we have had and your CV that I am observing, you seem to be inclined towards public policy. Is that a correct conclusion to make?
No, sir. I believe not towards public policy, but more towards public good. Policy is one way that can happen, that we can make that change. But I believe law is another way that wherein these policies and their implications are cemented in fact and are cemented and made sure that they are not they're implemented correctly and social good happens in that way. My papers seem to be inclined towards that because they've been oriented towards specific curriculum courses that I have had to take in my undergraduate.
Okay, why a LLB then?
Yes, sir. So the reason I want to do a law is because firstly, it's one of the subjects I've been passionate about right from the beginning. It is an area where my knowledge, my vision for the society and my interests also align. Since I'm inclined towards research, towards writing, towards debating, I believe law as a profession, as a field allows me to tap into my resources, tap into my aptitudes, and then apply them for the good of the society in the future I want. And then LLB is the educational grounding element for that.
And if presume that, let's say that you were not to pursue a LLB, what would you pursue after your graduation? Let's say the LLB is not an option. What would you pursue?
So I would go forward with my master's, and then I would appear for the UPSC examination. And
Masters in
political science.
Political science.
Yes.
Now, when you say that you're passionate from the beginning in law, so can you elaborate on this beginning, as in when did this interest start developing? Which grade or what subject has made you turn your journey towards law?
Yes, sir. From the beginning, from my family, the value of political discussion, the value of civic duty has been instilled in me right from the time I began discussing things with my family. And taking social sciences, taking the arts subjects in level, and studying sociology in particular and political science in particular is what drew me towards the law. I believe a lot of philosophy that underpins sociology, political science, and law is the same. So rather than moving towards the path of a political science career, but I believe those are subjects that can also be utilized to the whole in law. And this would be the particular choice of profession while applying those skills and knowledges which are intersectional and interdisciplinary in so many ways.
What are your views on the recent marital rape judgment by the Delhi High Court? Which view do you agree with, as one of the judges dissented and one of the judges, basically it was a split verdict?
Yes.
So what is your take, and where is the exception given, in which section of the IPC, and which committee is heading or was heading the inquiry into marital rape as an offense?
So it's given under section 375 where rape is given. I am not sure about the committee that's heading the inquiry, but as far as my views on the topic go, I would want to see marital rape being criminalized in India. I do agree. I mean, I've read the verdicts of both sides, of both judges, and I think the only thing that differentiates a married and an unmarried woman when it comes to cases like this is the presence of a legally married male in their life. But I don't think that's substantially a good enough reason to then differentiate between consent of a married woman and consent of an unmarried woman, as the dissenting judge in this case said that the consent in a marital relationship is something that cannot be carried forward in cases of marital rape. However, I believe a no at the end of the day is a no. And there are a lot of abuses that happen within the marital relationship. And in the society that we are living, we need to reconceptualize the concept and the institution of marriage itself in terms with the progress that we have made in our gender, in mitigating gender inequalities.
Okay. And what are your views about, do you agree that there was a need to pass the Criminal Procedure Identification Bill, as in make it into an act, or Criminal Identification Act? Do you agree with that?
Yes, sir, I do believe that with technology, we need to adopt these technological progresses that we are making in society within our legal and criminal procedures as well. And we have a country where the backlog of criminal cases is big. So if we have technologies that can help us assist with it, then we definitely need to tap into them, as the rest of the world is also doing. However, at the same time, we are a democratic liberal country. We need to be cognizant of the risks that come with it, of giving too much power to public officials on tapping the data, and especially biometric data, which is such a sensitive kind of data today. And so there need to be risks and balances and checks that we keep in mind, but we also need to move forward with the technology.
Good. Now, I'm seeing another research paper on your CV that is a tale of two protests, a comparative analysis of the anti-CAA protests and anti-farm law protests.
Yes.
What was the conclusion of this?
So the conclusion of this was that both the groups, the farmers and the Muslim population of India, in the case of anti-CAA, have different bargaining powers within the society. And that different bargaining powers come from different economic backgrounds, different social backgrounds, and different cultural contexts that we are living in. So while the public perception of the farm laws and the farmers as the annadatas of our nation is something that allowed the protests to carry on for that long, that allowed there to be some negotiating scope within the discussion of the farmers' protest, and that allowed them to move on from the 26th January incident, any kind of violence within the anti-CAA was also met with hostility within the public. So the public perception of the Hindu-Muslim divide never left the conversation of the anti-CAA protest, even when the issue was so crucial, such as disenfranchisement of an entire minority. So the public social perceptions and how these the different groups with different social powers could then spin off the tales and spin off the reasons of their protests was very different, and that impacted how they were perceived and how the government then reacted to it.
Let us say that you were hired by the Union of India to argue against the farm protests. What would be your main core crux of the argument there?
So I believe if I was hired by the Union of India to represent them, my first argument would be in the sense that certain demands by the farmers, their security, the guarantee of the MSP have been met. So once negotiations have taken off, protests need to hinder down so that public life can move on as it was already moving on through issues like COVID. We had seen so many issues, and if the matter is on the negotiating table and there is scope for conversation, then probably the message needs to be sent out to the people as well that the government is willing to listen, and therefore there needs to be a give and take here. There needs to be a certain cooperation, and from there you would move on to then educating the people about how these laws can be good, mitigating their concerns in an educational manner. But protests were only hindering that process of negotiation from moving forward.
And let us say that you were hired by the Union of India to defend the exception from being struck down, exception section 375 of the IPC of rape. What would be your viewpoint? And what would be your argument then?
So my argument from the Union of India's perspective, the Solicitor General has stated the issues, and there have been many comments on this as well, that the institution of marriage is at stake here, and marriage is considered the primary social institution within society. It is around marriage that everything in law, in politics, in political science takes place. So my suggestion then probably wouldn't be to blatantly say that this is not something we would do, but rather suggest other means to mitigate it, suggest how it can be done probably in steps. Because to expect a polity which is deeply rooted in conservative ideas to overnight change its views can only lead to more backlash and not a process of development in that sense. So it would be to suggest how there can be changes made in a gradual manner rather than an abrupt manner of this, because it will have implications on marriage as a society and as an institution, and family as an institution. But I would also not just be blatantly ignorant of the abuse of marital power by men in a marriage that happens. So it would be a diplomatic stance from the Union of India, because it has to take into account all stakeholders.
And what about what is your view on the misuse of domestic violence laws by women by lodging a multitude of fake cases against men?
So about that particular thing, well, I agree there are exceptions, but I think we can't make the rules on those exceptions. And those rules and the burden of proof being on men is there in place for a reason, and that's because historically subjugation of women has been proven. It is a fact. We are still a conservative society where even the reported cases sometimes don't end up criminalized or having penal action, but also there are so many cases that are underreported. So to make laws based on exceptions of a few at the cost of the many is never the way to go forward on it. So while there are recourses, other recourses that we can take from the law on filing wrong reports and such, I don't think those should be the basis of pro-women laws within the rights.
Okay, now we move on to another thing that is mentioned on your CV. Will US, China go to war? Do you think they'll go to war?
So the time I was writing that paper, the situation was such that it was right toward in the peak of the pandemic, and the lens of analysis that we took was complex interdependence, which is a theory given by Keyhane and Knight. And their analysis is on the grounds that there are so many multiple channels of communication and interests these days that the possibility of a hot war or nuclear war and the costs it can take is very less. And as we see, even within the trade war, we had MNCs within USA opposing the trade war and we had MNCs within China that were suffering costs. So you have stakeholders apart from the state that now get a say in public policy and in government international affairs reasons, right? However, if you look at it today, where a Ukraine and Russia war is already happening, probably to say that state power is diminished because of these reasons, I would change. We have proof that it's not true. So maybe if we look at a future invasion of Taiwan, the US president has recently said that USA will step in to help in those cases, but a full-fledged hot war situation like we had I don't think that will happen. I do believe that there are too many interconnections within the modern world for that to be feasible and not be destructive to both their interests.
Okay. And you said if you were not to pursue a LLB, you would pursue a master's in political science and then take the UPSC.
Yes, sir.
Any plans to take the UPSC post the LLB?
So my preliminary inclinations post LLB is judiciary. Yes, sir.
Yeah. And why judiciary and why not practice?
So the reason judiciary is because I believe in that way I can have a more direct role in making changes, in being able to make positive impact, and a practice would, while at the same time be a step forward in that direction, it would still limit the scope of people and the number of people I can help.
Okay. Have you ever interned at any law chambers or any advocate, or have you seen a judge in action or a magistrate actually carrying out their work profile or their job role?
No, sir, not in person.
Okay. Now, this is all. Now, question can end at even the first question I asked you, the interview can end right after that. All right. So you can say, you can mix and match all of these questions that I extracted out. Now the questions are going to be based on what I see on your CV. Primarily because of the paucity of time, the eyes will go to your academic research papers.
Yes, sir.
Right? Because as an interviewer, when I see, so I'm going to be seeing a lot of these very similar CVs. So like your schooling, I won't go into that. I won't go into LSR because plenty will be from LSR itself. Correct?
Yes,
I won't go into your course. I won't go into your academic and co-curricular achievements because there are no questions to be asked there. That certificate, vagera, that's okay. The question that I didn't ask you is from your internship. Now, but there is a reason for that. I'll come to it.
Yes, sir.
First and foremost, the intro has to be shortened.
Okay, sir. So what all should I cut from my intro?
Yeah. So you started off with your name, your schooling, your college, your CGPA, etc., etc. That all is fine. Correct?
Okay.
And till I think you reach the point that you've taught at an NGO. So basically, you have my attention in the introduction for around 30 to 40 odd seconds.
Okay,
now we need to filter out the most important points. Okay? So my name is such and such. I'm pursuing political science honors right now from LSR. I have just, so on your 30th, I'm just about to complete my final semester. Correct? From such and such school, do mention your marks. They are impressive. So we'll use them as an asset. And your past experience just of teaching at an NGO, and that's it. And just wind it up. Because rest of the things are already in the CV. Right? And wait, and then basically like this is a good quality about you, that you're waiting for me to ask the question. So mind you, this is not a conversation that I've had with you. This was just impromptu questions that I've been making while I'm talking to you. Now you had my attention till the time that you went into that teaching NGO bit, because that time I was also monitoring the time here. You had crossed around 1 minute 10 seconds by then. Now the standard attention span is around 40 odd seconds, 50 odd seconds to hear an introduction. All right.
Yes.
And after that, your CV is already there. So 30-40 seconds usko nipta den.
So I skipped the interests and hobbies part, and I skipped the debating and writing.
Let it be.
That's on the CV.
ठीक है जी, that's on the CV as well. जब मैं इंट्रोडक्शन कर रहा हूँ तो इंट्रोडक्शन का बेसिकली ये मामला है कि पहली बात तो मैं आपसे कोई प्रश्न पूछूं तो प्रश्न पूछूं कैसे? So basically whatever you mention, I'll pick out a thread from there and then start out. So let us say that you mentioned political science honors, I'll just pull out that thread and just start out. ठीक है. अब होगा क्या कि इंटरव्यूअर्स आल्सो, क्योंकि जितना जो भी आपको टाइम स्लॉट मिला, आई डोंट नो व्हेन इन द मॉर्निंग विल दे बी स्टार्टिंग आउट विद द इंटरव्यूज. इफ इट इज 10 around 9-10, तो देखो, no matter how good a person is, no matter how devta a person is, eventually everyone's human. By then they are also mentally fatigued. मतलब an interview at 5 तो भाई कहते भाई प्लीज दोबारा वही राम कहानी है. तो 1 में हम 1 वाले जो स्लॉट में है तो हम बीच में है कहीं पे, तो ठीक है. तो हमें थोड़ा सा एक शॉर्ट फॉर्म देके और पूछना है कि जी हाँ जी पूछो. ओके. नाउ सेकेंडली, जब मैंने लेबर कोड की बात करी, अगेन द टाइम इश्यू इज देयर, सो वी वेंट ऑन एंड ऑन एंड ऑन अबाउट द लेबर कोड. वील हैव टू ट्रंकेट इट. So what you do is, homework for you is, all of these academic research papers, prepare five liner ka short sa answer ki what were you up to. So out of any 5, 1 to pakka will be asked if they go after your CV, correct? So you need to not form a conclusion or recall what I wrote in that bloody paper or what was it. पहले ही लिख के रखो, है ना? हाँ, बस just main theme जो निकल कर आई थी उस academic research paper.
So around 30 seconds to 1 minute.
30 seconds, yeah, 30 seconds to 1 minute will do the trick.
Okay.
ठीक है जी, because it has to be very succinct.
Yes, sir.
Right, and because we are fighting with we are actually not fighting with the interviewer much, we are fighting with the clock here as well.
Yes, sir.
Right, तो हमारे पास सामान अगर हम एक ही टॉपिक पे अटक गए तो मर जाएंगे.
Yes.
ठीक है जी, क्योंकि वो अच्छा वो पूछना भी चाहेगा तो उसका पैनल वाला उसको कह देगा कि चलो जी अगले वाले को बुलाओ. तो जो हमारी जो ब्रिलियंस जो है वो अगर आ भी सकती थी, लेकिन अगर उसे मौका ही नहीं मिला तो क्या करेंगे, राइट? तो हर ये जो आई थिंक देयर आर हाउ मेनी, देयर आर 5, राइट? पांचों की मुझे एक शॉर्ट समरी बना दो.
5 to 6. So you want me to send them to you?
नहीं चलेगा, मेरे को चलता है. जस्ट मैं सिर्फ ये पर्पस ऑफ दिस एक्सरसाइज इज so that impromptu we are not trying to recall there.
Okay. So I've written down notes from these because I wrote them a long while back, so I had to go back and read them.
Main theme निकाल लो.
Okay.
कि उसके अंदर निकल कर आया था. Like for example, your academic research paper is the new labor codes implication across classes and sectors. Now the but obvious question is that what is the implication?
So there are pros, but there are cons that need to be mitigated, especially because they're in violation of the fundamental.
Correct.
That implications on the fundamental.
ठीक है जी.
That's
बस 3 लाइनें देनी है, काम खत्म हो गया. ठीक है जी. अच्छा, उनको कुछ और पूछना होगा, लेट देम मेक अ डीप डाइव. अगर उनको और कुछ पूछना है फिर पूछ लेंगे. उसके लिए तो हम वेरी फ्रैंकली बस हमें ये प्रिपेयर रहना है कि क्या पता अगर इसने नहीं पूछा दूसरे टॉपिक पे चला गया तो मेरे पास उसकी भी समरी हो, क्योंकि अगर मैं उस टाइम पे रिकॉल करने बैठूंगा या बैठूंगी तो फिर दिक्कत आएगी. करेक्ट. अच्छा, नाउ व्हेन वी वर टॉकिंग अबाउट ये LLB, ठीक है जी. So when you said passionate from the beginning, now if I am some sort of a panelist, I'll go after this point कि जी कौन सी beginning आपको क्या ख्वाब आ गया, ये है वो है फलाना ढमकाना. अब इसका एक बेटर आंसर कर लेते हैं कि सर I chose political science in LSR primarily on the basis that I had a fond leaning towards civics and social studies, right? And when I studied Indian polity in high school, I developed an inclination towards law, and therefore I have chosen to pursue it. Correct?
Yes.
That sounds you know, अब इसमें से पकड़ेगा तो पकड़ेगा क्या, है ना? क्या उखाड़ लेगा इसमें से, जो मतलब इनफॉर्मल लैंग्वेज है कि जी क्या पकड़ोगे अब आप इसमें से. नाउ दिस इज, क्योंकि अगर अच्छा मेरे जैसा इंटरव्यू, अच्छा मैं कहूंगा पैशनेट फ्रॉम द बिगिनिंग. अच्छा. So I've seen one of my students get stuck. There was DJS का इंटरव्यू था, last year था, हाई कोर्ट के जज करते हैं. तो कभी कभार वो पूछ लेते हैं व्हाट इज योर फेवरेट सब्जेक्ट. उसने बोलते हैं कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन. नाउ मुसीबत क्या आती है कि कई लोग, नाउ एवरीवन इज अ ह्यूमन बीइंग, कई लोग अगर ऐसे बैठे होते ना, बस तूने ये बोला और मैं पकड़ लिया. वैसे NLS में होगा नहीं, बिकॉज the quite academic leaning professors that are there, right? They're मतलब heavily into academics, so they aren't this, you know, कि मतलब कोई खुंदक निकालने के लिए बैठा हुआ है, ऐसा कुछ करा हुआ नहीं, ठीक ठाक लोग हैं. तो जैसे उसने कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन बोल दिया, अच्छा, उस जज के दिमाग में कहीं ये था कि कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन का तो अभी तुम्हें क नहीं आता, बस उसने उसको पकड़ लिया. तो इसलिए उसके आगे एडवाइस होता है कि भैया ऐसा है, फेवरेट सब्जेक्ट मतलब डिप्लोमेटिक आंसर दे दें तो बेटर है, क्योंकि वो जो कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन के सवाल पूछ लेगा फिर हम मर जाएंगे. अच्छा, आजकल क्या हो रहा है, डीजीएस वगैरह में रैपिड फायर लॉ बेस्ड क्वेश्चंस हो रहे हैं. अब यहाँ तो लॉ बेस्ड कोई क्वेश्चन नहीं आने वाला. That is for sure, because they have intentionally said in the exam also that we really don't, we'll teach you law. Why should we ask you about the law, right? Achha.
So, which reminds me, what's that commission? I knew the article number, I did not know the commission.
कोई दिक्कत नहीं. I think it was Justice Verma committee that looked into it. No?
I'll look into it.
Achha. Even I can be mistaken on that. I'll have to refer to my current affair notes. I just asked you कि अगर by chance marital rape पे अगर बात पहुंची, तो मैरिटल रेप के जरा वो हल्क वाली फाइल में से लीगल के जरा वो निकाल लेना, एक पैसेज पढ़ लेना उसमें मैरिटल रेप का जो होगा. ठीक है जी, वो वाला काम हो जाएगा.
That's another thing I wanted to ask, because some current topics that I should read up. There's Gyanvapi and I'm very apprehensive about that.
Gyanvapi में I don't think that, because it's such a hot controversial issue. I don't think that I'll touch it. They'll touch it basically.
That's just my concern.
तो हाँ, तो एक काम करो ना, उस पे भी एक आंसर लिखो. ये प्रोटेक्शन ऑफ क्या बोलते हैं, प्लेसेस ऑफ वर्शिप एक्ट, आई थिंक, इफ दैट इज द करेक्ट नेम ऑफ द एक्ट,
प्लेसेस ऑफ वर्शिप एक्ट,
है ना? प्रोटेक्शन, जस्ट गिव मी वंस. हाँ, प्रोटेक्शन ऑफ प्लेसेस ऑफ वर्शिप एक्ट 1991. द लेजिस्लेचर इनैक्टेड दिस एक्ट टू मेंटेन पीस एंड हार्मनी and to maintain the character of religious places as they stood on 15th August 1947, except Ayodhya. Correct?
Yes.
And I believe that we should be following that, the intention of the legislature to preserve peace and harmony. Just frame out a better language to this, right? And that is my view. They can come up with a counter question, but since this is primarily, now these institutions are primarily left leaning, तो वो ये ज्यादा हिंदू साइड की तरफ से बात करने नहीं वाले. तो लेकिन just to puzzle you, मतलब वो फेसबुक पे पहले पोक का ऑप्शन आता था ना, then what about these rights? तो उनको हम बेसिकली उसका भी एक आंसर लिख लेते हैं कि अयोध्या, the Ram Mandir verdict was given very recently. The temple is being made. Article 370 was removed. CAA is being removed. CAA is in the pipeline of being implemented, basically. And the minority in our country may just feel very insecure at such back-to-back decisions.
Even the hijab and the triple talaq judgment.
Yeah. Mention that. And the minority of the country may just feel insecure and threatened by these back-to-back steps of the legislature, and we may just be headed for turmoil. And justice must not only be done, but also has to be seen to be done. वो वाला जो basically जो axiom ना, internet से इसकी correct wording लिख लेना. And to preserve the peace and harmony right now, we need to follow the spirit of the legislature when they must have enacted this act in 1991. ठीक है जी, ये वाला काम हो गया. अच्छा, LLB वाला आंसर हमारा सेट है. ओके, अच्छा, देन हम आ रहे हैं कि जी एक आपने वर्ड बोला था which I want you to replace when we were talking about LLB. ठीक है जी, कि I'm very good at debating or I like debating, something on that lines. ठीक है जी, and therefore law. ये शब्द हटा देना.
I recognize that.
हाँ, कोई बात नहीं, ये शब्द हटा देना. उसका कारण क्या है कि many law professors have this inclination कि कौन सा डिबेट हो रहा है जी लॉ में, हमें तो पता नहीं, राइट? अच्छा, डिबेट की जगह डिस्कशन एंड कीपिंग एन ओपन माइंड ऑफ चेंजिंग माय व्यू पॉइंट. यूट्यूब वाली बंदा देख लो कि ये तो बड़ा इनफॉर्मल डिस्कशन है. हाँ जी, हाँ, मतलब वो है इनफॉर्मल डिस्कशन है, क्या करें. ऐसी दिस इज प्रिपरेशन ना, दिस इज नॉट मेयरली अ मॉक इंटरव्यू. मेरे को बड़े सारे ईमेल आए कि प्लीज टेक आवर मॉक इंटरव्यू. देयर वर नॉट स्टूडेंट्स इन द ऑनलाइन कोर्स. we said either you pay a fee or free में तो नहीं होने वाला ये. Free में in the sense, fee नहीं in the sense कि या तो online course, there are 3 more from the online course that have an interview call. So उनके लिए तो this is part. We cannot be affording to increase the competition at मतलब to be free कीजिए अगले साल और बच्चे ले लेंगे, because I don't believe that very specific preparation is required for this exam. मतलब what do you teach exactly, what do you teach for this exam? अच्छा, now we come to debate वाला शब्द हट जाएगा, discussion आ जाएगी. When we went into the marital rape वाली discussion, I want you to add a line that, yeah, sure, I support this proposition that the exception should be struck down and the marital rape should be criminalized as an offense. However, we can consider putting in safeguards to prevent the misuse of the law. Correct? So that is a far nuanced position to take.
Yes.
To assail the doubts and fears of the other side. And law is misused all the time. Therefore, the tort of malicious proceedings also exists.
I was forgetting malicious proceeding. I remember that.
Therefore, the law of malicious proceedings also exists, and there are false cases filed on a regular basis in the litigation or in the legal system of a country. That doesn't mean that we don't enact laws for those specific offenses. So, for example, one of the commonly, you don't state one of the column. For example, theft. If a person is falsely, if a servant is falsely charged with theft, which a number of them are, does that mean that we strike down theft as a section? We just put in some safeguards. Right. And even the procedure of arrest is violated by the police. So the Supreme Court came out with guidelines of arrest. We can always have guidelines. In this case, certain things are to be followed. And based on further judicial precedents, we can elaborate on those guidelines. Okay? So that kills off anyone trying to catch you from पीछे से आके कि जी अच्छा ऐसे बोला है, चलो जी इसको रिवर्स मार लेते हैं. And mind you, they will be in favor of striking, basically criminalizing the offense of marital rape, because it's an institution that is founded on these very you can say, so every institution has a thought process. So they are in favor, but to trouble you. Yes. They will take a reverse gear. They may take a reverse gear and try to trouble you. तो हमें पहले ही हम चलते हैं ना, ये लैंग्वेज लेके चलते हैं. अच्छा, ये एग्जैक्ट लैंग्वेज याद तो रहने नहीं वाली. नो प्रॉब्लम, बट ये तो याद रह जाएगा कि अच्छा फॉल्स, ये क्या बोलते हैं फॉल्स, इसके लिए सेफगार्ड डाल दो, गाइडलाइंस डाल दो, और क्या है. ठीक है जी. अच्छा, देन वी कम टू यू नॉट परस्यूइंग द यूपीएससी एंड टेकिंग द जुडिशरी. इस पे जो क्वेश्चन बनता है, जो मैंने आपसे जानबूझ के पूछा नहीं उस टाइम पे, because I wanted to discuss this out with you, when you said that this is a more direct role. ठीक है जी. तो अच्छा, कोई अगर खुंदकी बैठा हो जिसको आईएएस से बहुत प्यार हो, तो वो कहेगा अरे आईएएस भी तो उतना ही डायरेक्ट है, राइट? तो उसके अंदर हम ये कर सकते हैं कि that will put my LLB to a better use, because this is a probable question कि फिर जुडिशरी क्यों, फिर तो यूपीएससी करो. LLB के बाद बड़े सारे लोग यूपीएससी का अटेम्प्ट देते हैं. That will put my LLB to a better use. I'll be able to implement the knowledge that I have gained and be involved with the public in a much more legal fashion. Or rather, I can administer justice in the way that I think that it should be administered. क्योंकि ज्यादातर जनता ना इसके पीछे पड़ जाती है कि यूपीएससी बेटर है या जुडिशरी. मतलब आप इन द सेंस, अगर आपकी तरफ क्वेश्चन आएगा कि व्हाई नॉट यूपीएससी आफ्टर एलएलबी, व्हाई जुडिशरी नाउ, राइट? we need to have an answer framed out for that, and pretty much a 2 to 3 liner answer that it puts my LLB into a much better use. I want to apply my knowledge of ये क्या बोलते हैं, all of my academic research papers plus added on with an LLB. I believe that being a magistrate or a civil judge will be a better option than an IAS officer. And I have nothing against IAS officers, so we'll just try to be a little more diplomatic there. ठीक है जी, क्योंकि ज्यादातर लोग डिबेट में, बट मैं आपको फिर बता दूं, ऐसा कुछ नहीं होने वाला कि इतने एक्सट्रीम सिनारियो में आपको आके ऐसे जानबूझ के पजल आउट करें, कुछ नहीं होगा, because they pretty much have 5 to 10 minutes with you, right? It is pretty much a formality to check your articulation and ask you max 2 to 3 questions. We are just trying to cover out probable ones. Even if none of these show up, no worries, at least we have an approach to tackle it out. ठीक है जी, आज हमें ये बात तो पता चल गई कि हमें 1 से 2 मिनट से ऊपर नहीं जाना है. We have to give them time to ask us more and more questions. तो 30 सेकंड के आसपास, तकरीबन 30 सेकंड से 50 सेकंड के आसपास चले जाना है. अच्छा, एक काम करना आयुषी, ज्यादातर लोग एंजाइटी होगी उस टाइम पे, अभी तो नहीं है, उस टाइम पे थोड़ा होता है कि नहीं क्या पूछ लिया, ठीक है जी, और लग रहा है कि हाँ यार सिलेक्शन हो जाए तो अच्छी बात ही है, राइट? या तो फिंगर क्रॉस कर लेना, ऑनलाइन है ना नीचे, या तो फिंगर क्रॉस करना, ये नहीं कि हम कोई कसम खा रहे हैं, नहीं, या कुछ ऐसे बेसिकली कुछ भी हैंड सिग्नल या कोई पेन या कुछ भी याद आए कि 50 सेकंड में मेरे को बोलना बंद करना है, टू कंक्लूड, और इसको बोलने देना है, कि ये नहीं कि मेरा ये रेडियो चल जाए, राइट? क्योंकि उस टाइम ना याद नहीं रहता. तो अगर कुछ हाथ में होगा, अगर कुछ हाथ में या तो पकड़ा हो, या कोई, कई लोगों के ट्रिक हैं ये ऐसे, यहाँ पे कि कुछ भी चीज सो दैट इट कैन रिमाइंड. अच्छा, यहाँ पे और दूसरी बात, यहाँ पे या तो लैपटॉप के कहीं साइड में एक स्टिकी नोट लगा लो, 1 मिनट की, आंख पड़ेगी कि जी मेरे को कंक्लूड करके इनको बोलने देना है. अच्छा, नो फॉलोइंग द फिलोसफी ऑफ, सो मेनी ऑफ अस हैव दिस फिलोसफी कि 1 क्रोसिन से बुखार उतरता है तो 5 क्रोसिन खा लेंगे तो और ही बढ़िया. नहीं, ज्यादा नहीं बोलना है. हाँ, बोलना है सेकंड तरीके से, जी मैंने आपको आपका रिस्पॉन्स दे दिया, जिससे उनको ये भी ना लगे कि यार कहीं ये कोई डम्बास तो नहीं आ गया कि इसको शायद बोलना ही ना आ रहा हो, बट कॉन्फिडेंटली जवाब देके कि हाँ जी अब आप पूछिए, है ना. अच्छा, ये काम हो गया. मास्टर्स कर ली हमने पॉलिटिकल साइंस में, और फिर हम ये जा रहे थे यूपीएससी करने, ठीक है जी. अच्छा, मास्टर्स इन पॉलिटिकल साइंस, इसके ऊपर एक प्रश्न आता है कि अच्छा चलो जी एलएलबी नहीं करते हैं तो फिर मास्टर इन पॉलिटिकल साइंस करके इसका कोई फायदा मिलेगा हमें इन यूपीएससी? फ्रेम आउट एन आंसर फॉर दैट. और व्हाई, अच्छा व्हाई नॉट द यूपीएससी राइट आफ्टर योर ग्रेजुएशन? इनडायरेक्ट वे ऑफ आस्किंग, मास्टर्स की क्या जरूरत है ना? तो उनको बोलो, उनको एक आंसर लिख लेगा था 2 मिनट और, तो उसमें आप एक ही आंसर आप ये लिखेंगे कि आई बिलीव दैट आई नीड टू परस्यू अ पोस्ट ग्रेजुएशन टू specialize in the subject and finish off my formal graduation. I've always looked or aimed at pursuing a post graduation. So if not law, then it is a definite masters in political sciences, and then only the UPSC. क्योंकि ये एक क्वेश्चन बनता था जो मेरे दिमाग में आया था, मैंने जानबूझ के पूछा नहीं, टू नॉट ब्रेक योर फ्लो इन. ठीक है जी. अच्छा, and yeah, that's it.
I just had a few questions. So firstly, eye contact and posture and all these non-verbal cues.
हाँ, अच्छा, बीच में हुआ क्या था मैं बता रहा हूँ. अच्छा हुआ पूछ लिया तुमने पोस्चर और आई कांटेक्ट. बीच में एक क्वेश्चन पे आई हैड प्रीटी मच, आई थिंक, नॉट स्टम्प्ड यू, बट यू वर ट्राइंग टू मेक एन आंसर अप. उस टाइम पे ना शोल्डर ज्यादा हो रहे थे. सो दिस इज वन पैटर्न ऑफ बॉडी लैंग्वेज. जी हाँ जी. अच्छा, मैं सोच भी रहा हूँ तो थोड़ा सा या तो आंख ऊपर कर ली या थोड़ा सा सोचने में पॉज डाल दिया, बट थोड़ा सा. अच्छा, इसकी ट्रिक ये है, हाथ ऐसे करके ऐसा. दिस इज साइकोलॉजिकल ट्रिक. So this usually Professor Jordan Peterson uses. Now Jordan Peterson faces a lot of hot interviews in which he's asked, मतलब the journalists really go after him. He uses this ताकि, क्योंकि अगर देखो अगर हाथ खुले है ना
तो हिलेंगे.
So this reminds, अंगूठे यहाँ पे, this is ऐसे करके बैठ जाए कि जी हाँ जी पूछो. अच्छा अब जैसे मैंने ये करा हुआ है इस टाइम पे, but you cannot make it out, right? शोल्डर तो ठीक ही है. अच्छा और अगर मैंने हाथ छोड़ नहीं रहा, जैसे ही शोल्डर हिलेंगे मुझे मेरी पूरी बॉडी मतलब मुझे समझ में आ जाएगी कि जी हो गया काम. यहाँ पे रह लेंगे. Eye contact is pretty much fine. I don't think I never found any eye contact issues in your case. हाँ.
And, was I audible clearly and not fast because I speak fast?
No, you were जितनी पेस पे बोल रहे थे बिल्कुल ठीक है. नहीं कोई फास्ट पे नहीं है. हाँ जो मुझे लगा कि थोड़ा कभी कहीं कहीं हम ज्यादा ही चले गए, बस उसको रोक लेना है ना. बाकी अच्छा ऑडिबल की थोड़ी सी वॉल्यूम तो बढ़ सकती है, थोड़ी सी वॉल्यूम. अब मुसीबत ये है, आई कैन नॉट गिव यू एन एग्जैक्ट फीडबैक बिकॉज आई डोंट नो वेदर इट्स अ स्पेसिफिक इशू विद माय लैपटॉप और हाउ विल इट यूज बी साउंडिंग ऑन देयर लैपटॉप. व्हाट आर यू यूजिंग? दीस आर वायरलेस हेडफोन्स?
No, these are wired.
दीस आर वायर्ड. लैपटॉप से कनेक्टेड है?
हाँ.
अच्छा थोड़ा जरा माइक इधर मूव करना, थोड़ा सा मुंह की तरफ माइक मूव करना. अब बोलो.
I'm Ayushi Jain.
हाँ. अच्छा और अब थोड़ा दूर कर दो और फिर बोलो.
I am Ayushi Jain.
Doesn't make a difference. Doesn't make a difference. तो उसी पे रहने दो, वहीं पे रहने दो, ऐसी कोई दिक्कत नहीं.
Can you hear the disturbance from the fan? Because I'll probably switch off the fan.
No. Can you hear a disturbance from the air conditioner? It's on and it's right on my face. No. Zoom वो auto cancels it out.
Okay.
Okay. Zoom का ही link आना है. What have they said in the email? Zoom पे ही आना. ठीक है ठीक है. अच्छा और उस पे वो वेटिंग रूम में डाल देंगे. क्या टाइम है, स्लॉट क्या है?
1:30 to 3:30.
1:30 to
3:30.
3:30. ठीक है. तो अब ये 2 बजे आए, 2:30 बजे आए, 2:45 बजे आए, बस ऑन करके अपना नॉर्मल आराम से बैठे रहो, तो वो बता देंगे कि जी कब बुला रहे. बिकॉज ILI ऑल्सो डज द सेम थिंग, बट यूजली द वेटिंग टाइम इज अराउंड 45 odd minutes. इन ILI की LLM होती है एक, तिलक मार्ग पे इंस्टीट्यूट है, ओनली 15 सीट्स, वेरी कवेटेड LLM. तो वहां पे भी सेम सिनारियो चलता है. सो यूजली वेट टाइम इज 45 minutes, बट सिंस द नेम स्टार्ट्स विद एन ए, आई थिंक जल्दी आने का टाइम है. 1:30, आई थिंक 2 बजे के आसपास करा देंगे, 1:45-2 के आसपास करा देंगे. डू यू ड्रिंक कॉफी?
Sometimes.
Sometimes. Does it give you anxiety? Does it shoot up your BP? Does it shoot up your heartbeat?
It does nothing for me.
It does nothing. चलो जी. तो अगर कॉफी पीनी हो, जो भी पीना हो तो पी लेना भैया. हाँ. सिगरेट वालों को तो मैं बोलता हूँ भैया सिगरेट फूक के जाओ, नहीं तो दिमाग सारा टाइम सिगरेट में रहता है. ठीक है जी. आई डोंट थिंक दैट यू स्मोक और एनीथिंग, तो वैसी वाली कोई प्रॉब्लम होनी नहीं है. चाय वाय पीनी हो पीवा ले आराम से. अच्छा आराम से बैठना. दिस विल बी जस्ट अ कैजुअल कॉन्वर्सेशन. ये जो मैंने जो पूछा है, these interviews, जैसे मुझे अभी एक मेरी बैचमेट है जिसका अभी दिल्ली जुडिशरी क्लियर हुआ है जस्ट पिछले साल 2020 वाले में. they asked like 3-4 मिनट का इंटरव्यू क्या था, बस जस्ट एक नॉर्मल सी कॉन्वर्सेशन थी और उसको भेज दिया.
I lost your voice.
मैं कह रहा हूँ एक अभी DJS का था, one of my batchmates got selected. मैंने उससे पूछा कि क्या क्या पूछा भाई, तो कहते 3-4 मिनट, जस्ट अ वेरी कैजुअल कॉन्वर्सेशन एंड दैट्स इट, एंड इट वाज अ 150 मार्कर इंटरव्यू. तो एज सच इतना कुछ बड़ा ग्रैंड नहीं होता. ILI LLM के भी इंटरव्यू में एज सच इतना बड़ा कुछ ग्रैंड नहीं होता. दैट आल्सो इज अ 10 मार्कर इंटरव्यू. सो इट्स अ वेरी कैजुअल चिट चैट. बट if I go on their website and I go as per their formal declaration, their formal declaration for the NLSAT interview is passion for, I think it was here, this is, I'll just read it out to you. वैसे ना इतना कोई फॉलो नहीं करता, but
I lost the last, like the moment you started telling about your batchmate, your voice.
Yeah, so the batchmate gave a 150 marker interview, all right, for DJS, and it was for 3-4 minutes. So it wasn't exactly, अब आ रही है आवाज?
Yes, and now it's right.
So it wasn't exactly, this grand that they'll go into the nitty-gritties of the law or full stop or full मतलब commas of bare acts. ऐसा कुछ नहीं होता. Just a normal casual conversation, just like we've had. ये ज्यादा tough थी. to prepare you, क्योंकि नहीं तो ये point निकालें कैसे? अगर हम इसी टोन में बैठेंगे हाँ कुछ नहीं होता चलो चलो चलो, फिर तो कोई फायदा ही नहीं मिलेगा ना. अच्छा, इन्होंने अपने इंटरव्यू प्रोसेस में क्या लिखा हुआ है? Give me one.
They've said logical reasoning, articulation skills.
Basic articulation skills, original thinking, reasoning ability, and passion for the law and public service. Right? I think we have covered out everything. I've tried to puzzle you. Original thinking हो गई. Articulate तो I think verbal वाला test हो ही गया है. Correct? Passion for law and public service भी कर लिया. Judiciary UPSC वाला angle भी हमने cover out कर लिया है. Correct? ओरिजिनल थिंकिंग मैरिटल रेप, और वहां पे घसीट के इसीलिए लेकर गया था कि दूसरी. अच्छा, वो जो यूनियन ऑफ इंडिया अगर आर्ग्यू करना चाहे तो क्या आर्ग्यू करेगी? दैट इज ओरिजिनल थिंकिंग ओनली. मतलब intentionally poking you, and reasoning ability is coupled out with that only.
But the answers for the Union of India questions.
यूनियन ऑफ इंडिया में जब यूनियन ऑफ इंडिया में, अच्छा, जब मैंने मैरिटल रेप आर्ग्यू करने को कहा था, राइट, यूनियन ऑफ इंडिया की तरफ से, तो तब उन्होंने कहा था कि आपने कहा था कि आई विल नॉट बी स्टिल बी इग्नोरेंट ऑफ यू नो ऑफ द इशू. बट अगर हम यूनियन ऑफ इंडिया की तरफ से ही आर्ग्यू कर रहे हैं, फिर तो वी हैव टू गो हैमर एंड टॉन्ग्स दैट यू नो माय मेन आर्ग्यूमेंट विल बी दैट दिस विल कोलैप्स द इंस्टीट्यूशन ऑफ मैरिज. ठीक है जी. एंड द फेक केसेस दैट विल बी फाइल्ड, बिकॉज नाउ एवरी टाइम अ डिवोर्स का केस विल बी फाइल्ड टू एक्सटॉर्ट मोर मनी, द मैरिटल रेप क्लॉज विल बी पुट इन. So I'll try to persuade the judge that we have enough provisions in the law under the domestic violence, cruelty, everything else to use it as an offense. So we have a lot of provisions already existing in the IPC that can be used instead of labeling it as a specific offense. Full stop. क्योंकि यूनियन ऑफ इंडिया का वकील ये नहीं बोलेगा, है ना, दूसरी साइड का नहीं बोलना. तब तो ये रीजनिंग एबिलिटी आ गई. इवन दो दे मे नॉट अग्री विद दिस पोजीशन ऑन अ पर्सनल लेवल, बट स्टिल टू कवर यू आउट फ्रॉम दिस एंगल दे कैन गो इन फॉर इट. अच्छा, सेम गोज फॉर हिजाब. हिजाब वाली जजमेंट के अंदर दोनों साइड से दो दो लाइन लिख लो. हिजाब की साइड से एक तो जी क्या बोलते हैं, फ्रीडम ऑफ स्पीच एंड एक्सप्रेशन को तो चलो छोड़ते हैं, फ्रीडम ऑफ रिलीजन. ठीक है जी, कि इट इज अ प्रैक्टिस ऑफ माय रिलीजन. And and argument tha just like Sikhs wear their turban, so it is a formal of it is a religious attire, so therefore I also should be allowed. Correct. And let us say opposite argument, Union of India ka argument. Union of India ka argument kya hai ki it is a qualified public place and hijab is not an essential religious practice, because then every woman will be forced to wear it. And there has to be a penalty attached to not wearing it, and not every woman is wearing it. Correct. And we need to follow a certain decorum in an educational institution, but you are free to wear it in your public place. An educational institution is not a public place. Like for example, right now, if I wish to enter LSR, I won't be allowed to. जी आप कौन हो, है ना? But you will be allowed to. You are a student. Correct. तो दोनों साइड के तो दो तीन आर्ग्यूमेंट. अच्छा, सेम केस उसका कर लेते हैं, क्रिमिनल प्रोसीजर आइडेंटिफिकेशन वाले का, कि व्हाई डू वी नीड दिस डेटा. तो उसके अंदर एक करंट अफेयर नोट कर लो आयुषी. इसके अंदर अभी ये इन्होंने एक जो नफीस स्कीम है, अभी पढ़ी नहीं होगी, अप्रैल का करंट अफेयर, मई का करंट अफेयर अभी हल्क में आ जाएगा, आपको अभी मिल जाएगा. नफीस स्कीम मध्य प्रदेश पुलिस ने, आई विल जस्ट शेयर माय स्क्रीन विद यू. So MP has become the first state to identify deceased person through Nafis. Now Nafis का जो full form है जी, Nafis का full form, एक सेकंड रुकना, यहाँ पे करते हैं. एक तो ये जर्नलिस्ट कह रहे जी आर्टिकल में लिख रहे हो, नफीस का फुल फॉर्म ही बता दो. नफीस का फुल फॉर्म is National Automated Fingerprint Identification System. So this can help in speedier administration of justice and to keep a track of criminals with a record of recurrent activities or offenses. But on the other side, then there is always right to privacy, right? That this violates right to privacy, and any accused also, any accused's data, who the person who has not been convicted, can be recorded and perhaps misused by the police themselves. दोनों साइड के आर्गुमेंट रख लेते हैं तैयार. आई थिंक दीज आर द 3 हॉट टॉपिक्स राइट नाउ. ज्ञानवापी वाला तो कर ही लिया, प्रोटेक्शन ऑफ ये रिलीजियस प्लेसेस, ये जो 1991 वाली जो एक्ट है. एंड yeah, I think we've pretty much covered out all angles.
Is there a possibility they, since NLS does that, love US, the current Roe v. Wade and the gun rights and all those issues?
अब थोड़ी सी आवाज बिगड़ गई, दोबारा बोलना.
I'm saying, is there a possibility for them to go into international issues? In the US context, you have gun rights because of the Texas shooting. You have Roe v. Wade.
I truly don't think so. Because it's eventually we are aiming for a LLB, no? I don't think so. 1% पूछ भी लें, बट आई थिंक वो यूएस चाइना वाला वो मैंने आपके सीवी से निकाल ही लिया है, राइट? और बाकी आज सच इंटरनेशनल अभी इन्फ्लेशन बस, और कुछ भी नहीं है. इन्फ्लेशन, अब इन्फ्लेशन का क्या है जी? इन्फ्लेशन, अब अगर आप इकोनॉमिक्स ऑनर्स के स्टूडेंट होते, मैं पक्का आपसे इन्फ्लेशन का सवाल पूछ लेता कि जी अच्छा आप तो इको ही पढ़ रहे हो, आप बताओ व्हाट आर दी, हाउ कैन वी कंट्रोल इट. बट आप सिंस पढ़ नहीं रहे, तो मुझे नहीं लगता कि आज सच कोई सवाल, क्योंकि आप पॉलिटिकल साइंस में हो, मुझे नहीं लगता कि उनकी नजर भी जाएगी इस तरफ कि वो आपसे ये पूछें. आई थिंक दे विल कीप यू कन्फाइंड टू द लीगल इश्यूज. पॉलिटिकल साइंस, यूपीएससी, जुडिशरी में जाएंगे, लॉ एंड पब्लिक सर्विस, वहां पे पकड़ सकते हैं आपको. जहां जहां पकड़ सकते हैं पोटेंशियली बेस्ड ऑन योर सीवी, वी हैव डिस्कस्ड आउट ऑल. ठीक है जी.
In case they do ask inflation, because I'm not the best at economics. I know recently the government reduced the repo rate.
So you can take this position that on the macroeconomic scale, an event which was as titanic or colossal as COVID, and lockdowns were put in place, it had to have an effect. But in the macroeconomic context, everything takes about 1 to 2 years to materialize, because the effect is always delayed. The cause happens, the effect comes later, and it got accelerated by Russia's invasion of Ukraine, right? अच्छा, एक NLSAT में याद है हमने वो प्रिपेयर करा था ऐसे, आई थिंक वो फाइल के अंदर था, यूजलेसनेस ऑफ यूनाइटेड नेशंस या यूथफुलनेस ऑफ यूनाइटेड नेशंस. वो तो इन्होंने सैंपल पेपर में उठा के डाल दिया था. शशि थरूर वाला जो ऐसे जो मैंने निकाल कर दिया था.
So I'm on my phone right now.
अच्छा, you are on your phone. हाँ ठीक है, कोई बात नहीं. अच्छा, अब हुआ क्या लैपटॉप पे?
It's charging. I'll keep sure of that.
तो ये क्या बोलते हैं, make sure that this does not happen.
Yes sir.
ठीक है, अच्छा है, आज ही काम कर लो, जो आज गड़बड़ हो सकती है वही कर लो. ठीक है जी.
Okay.
अच्छा, और कुछ? मेरे हिसाब से आई थिंक वी आर एडिक्वेटली कवर्ड फ्रॉम ऑल एंगल्स.
Okay sir.
ठीक है जी. अब कब है? 30th?
Yes sir.
मंडे. ठीक है.
Yes sir.
ठीक. बाकी और कुछ ज्यादा कुछ करने की जरूरत नहीं है. आई थिंक ऑल टॉपिक्स आर कवर्ड. सारे लीगल करंट अफेयर वगैरह भी कवर हो गए. अच्छा, 2 चीजें लिख लो प्लीज. चीफ इलेक्शन कमिश्नर राजीव कुमार बिल्कुल अभी हुआ है 15 तारीख को.
Yes sir.
और सुमन बेरी, ये आपका वाइस प्रेसिडेंट ऑफ नीति आयोग. जस्ट इन केस वो ऐसे पूछेंगे नहीं आपसे, लेकिन पता होना चाहिए, जस्ट हमें पता होना चाहिए.
Okay sir.
ठीक है जी. ये 2 मैसिव करंट अफेयर हुए हैं, तो ये 2 है, और एक और अभी करंट अफेयर हुआ है, अभी कल परसों ही हुआ है, वो भी लिखो. बाकी लीगल तो हमने सारे कवर कर ही लिए हैं.
Yes,
लीगल तो जो हॉट वाले थे वो तो सारे कवर कर लिए हैं. एक ये लिख लो.
So
हाँ जी.
क्या तो ये CEC and BP of नीति आयोग, and what's the third one?
ये आपका न्यू इकोनॉमिक इनिशिएटेड बाय द यूएस, इसका नाम है जी इंडो पैसिफिक इकोनॉमिक फ्रेमवर्क फॉर प्रॉस्पेरिटी, IPEF.
हाँ.
ठीक है जी. बस ये
ठीक
है ना।
इंटरनेशनल करंट अफेयर्स में लाइक आई नो ऑस्ट्रेलिया हैज एन ईवीएम ऑल
बाकी मतलब वही है, इंटरनेशनल में श्रीलंका उड़ गई, इकोनॉमिक क्राइसिस इन श्रीलंका,
हाँ
राइट।
श्रीलंका
बस बाकी तो आई थिंक आपसे नहीं पूछेंगे, क्योंकि हम इकोनॉमिक्स की पहली बात तो स्टूडेंट नहीं है ना, इंटरनेशनल के, राइट। हम तो पॉलिटिकल साइंस वाले हैं, तो हम तो यूपीएससी वाली लाइन पे चले जाएंगे। ठीक है जी, चलिए। बाकी कुछ होगा तो क्या बोलते हैं, जस्ट ड्रॉप मी अ मैसेज।
यस सर
एग्जाम खत्म करके 31st वाला, देन सारे मॉक्स वॉक्स निपटा लो डीयू वाले। ठीक है जी, देन गेट बैक ऑन ट्रैक ऑन दैट प्रिपरेशन। 30th को तो जो होगा है ना। ठीक है जी, चलो, विशिंग यू ऑल द बेस्ट।
थैंक यू सर।
ठीक है जी, ओके बाय।